Hello everybody and welcome to episode 5 of the Dead Pixel podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mr. Brown, and each week as always I'll be joined by a multitude of hosts. This week joining me is Mr. Pink. Hello Mr. Pink.
Hello there Mr. Brown. I'm amazed that ISIS haven't raided my establishment, but I'm still here.
After last week's comments, so
yeah.
As ever, Mr. White, how are you today?
Good morning, good evening, or good night. I'm not going to tell what time it is now, but everyone who listens, it's nice to be here.
And finally, Mr. Orange, how are you today, mate?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, same as ever.
If anybody's been looking at the website, tonight's topic is police brutality. That's the roundtable for tonight. But before we get there, guys, we do have another comment, believe it or not. So we've got at least one guy listening.
Yay!
So there is hope.
There is hope in the world.
Hope, yeah. We've got John from Manchester. I've heard of it. I've heard of the place, Manchester. I'm not sure exactly where it is. But John from Manchester, he says...
Up north, mate. Up north.
Up north. He says, enjoy the show, but just wants to ask, what would you consider credible news outlets of any sort? So I assume he means, where do we go for our sources, guys? So, Mr. White, where do you go for your sources, mate?
Well, I cannot rely on one source, even if he didn't fail me previously. That's the thing. You always need to compare the information with the other sources, and then basically see who's the beneficiary of the situation is. So we're talking artsy, we're talking newspapers, we're talking internet.
Which newspapers? Which internet?
Well, internet pages. I will go to the forums. I will look for the forums for example, if we have situations somewhere in Middle East, the Middle East forum would be the best somewhere. You know, the people that are actually involved into it. Some situation that are near to my friends, I would obviously turn to them as well to find out their situation. In regards to the newspapers, all sorts of papers, starting from yellow pages, from the bad papers like Metro. I will go to the Guardian and to the Mirror and to the Daily News. Depends on where do I see the information. Okay. Even BBC.
I'm a bit worried that you actually said the yellow pages there, but anyway, that's up to you. Mr. Pink, what do you do, mate?
I get all my information from the Bradford and West Riding Argus.
Enough said. Mr. Orange?
It's basically as many sources as possible. Internet, probably more than it should be. Newspapers, pretty much all of them apart from things like The Sun, the Daily Mirror, etc.
No tabloids allowed, yeah?
Well, I think you need to read to see, maybe not so much as like getting your information, but getting information on how it's being delivered. Obviously, you know, people in certain newspapers are owned by people who are actually causing the news in the first place.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Pink, have you something to say?
Yeah, I think he's pretty much covered what I was going to say, but the internet, you do have to look at all the angles, who's putting it up there, as Mr. White so eloquently said. Obviously, who's going to benefit from having an article slanted in one way or another, especially when you get like Fox News and things like that. You're thinking, okay, well, obviously you've got an axe to grind. RT, same thing. Al Jazeera, same thing again. But hopefully, if you look at all these sites, you can kind of see if there's any kind of string of truth. But if they all say the same event happened and the same 5 people died, then I can kind of trust that. The newspapers, not as much as it used to be. Certainly, I mean, the Daily Star just isn't what it used to be. Sorry about that, kids, but there you go.
Yeah, for me personally, I echo all the sensible stuff, obviously. Right, so John, hopefully that's answered your question. As many sources as possible, really. Okay, tonight's topic, guys, police brutality. Now, just before we start, there was something that Mr. Pink didn't actually want this show to be called Police Brutality, for a number of reasons. Mr. Pink, why did you not want it to be called Police Brutality?
Because I kind of thought that it might sound a little bit like a biased show, i.e. it would be... people will be tuning and just expecting us to rant about the police and what a bunch of bastards they are, stuff like that. I wanted it to sound like a more unbiased show, so to discuss both sides. So I was going to go with police powers, but 2 things. I'm kind of hoping that the people that are listening to this have got at least 2 brain cells to rub together, so they're going to realise that maybe we're going to discuss all parts of the aforementioned title, and also
We need to start from the bottom, Mr. Ping, is that right? As
Yeah.
long as I understand.
Yeah.
One side is where the police overusing the power, and where the other side where the police actually do a good thing for the society.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was my second point. Thank you very much for rescuing me there, Mr. White. But my second point being, at the end of the day, police brutality just sounds like a better show, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
Exactly.
Of course it does.
So well, we do want to
And-
discuss both sides.
To be fair, it is an actual thing, police
Yes,
brutality.
yes,
We haven't
it's
invented. We
It's
haven't
a standalone
invented.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for me personally, I'm going to say something fairly controversial, maybe, but I want you to listen to the full thing that I'm going to say. I'm going to say that, according to me, and only me, my opinion, I think that the UK police is actually, from what I can gather, the best police force in the world. However, I want to say, and most importantly, I still do not think that they are good enough. All right, that's my stance on this, and I hope later on we're going to discuss the UK police.
Right.
However, guys, I do think let's be honest. The subject of the show probably came up due to a little incident that happened in the US of A. Yeah, the place where the greatest and worst things of humanity can happen in a day. Okay, and that's again, this is the police. So Ferguson, an unarmed man there was shot 6 times, twice in the head. Mr. White.
Right, yeah, it's an outrageous. So first of all, a person which is unarmed, running away from the police, but then stops and raises his hands up, but then still got shot 6 times. Let me just tell you, I mean, if you a shooter, shooting 6 times get you about 2 seconds. 2 seconds is a long time, fellas. So 3 shots a second make you think a lot. Your brain works really quick. So in those 2 seconds, you're reacting really well. So it actually gives you a signal maybe to stop or maybe to think. So that's the thing. 6 times he's hit the body of the late Mr. Ferguson.
Plus,
Well,
they
he's
are
a boy.
obviously trained as well, so that for them
Yeah.
2 seconds is a hell of a long time.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're talking about unjustified use of the force by the law enforcement.
Yeah.
Which means what the law enforcement's for.
Yeah, couple of stats, guys, just to put a bit of meat on the bones. There's roughly between 400 and 500 innocent people that are killed by cops in the US every year. It is now illegal to film police in most states. Okay, a black man is shot and killed by police in the US on average every 28 hours. Okay,
Wow.
so what do we think of that, guys?
Horrible, disgusting, Mr. Pink.
Mr. Pink.
Well, anyway, I was being quiet and listening, not waving my hands about deliberately. Okay, now there is a police report saying that they actually got this young lad in the car and he made a reach for one of the guns. Okay, and then he somehow got out of the police cruiser and he's been running away. And they've been yelling, stop or we'll shoot. And eventually they've shot him. Now, when they did shoot him, apparently he did have, to witnesses, his hands in the air. Now, okay, but you're a trained police officer. If he's in the back of your cruiser, I am assuming that you've patted him down as per regulations before you put him in there. So you know he's not armed. If you know he made a grab for your gun, which I don't understand how, because I believe that these cruisers are partitioned. But okay, all right, he made a grab for your gun. Maybe it's that you were shutting the door, and that's how he managed to get back out. But you still know that he hasn't got a gun because you just shot him with the same gun. So why do you feel the need to shoot him? You've got a car. You can easily outrun him in the car, or you could choose to shoot him in the leg or something like that. It seems quite an overreaction, and it has been blown up quite quickly there, and it's revealed a couple of undercurrent things that a lot of these places, and again, not wanting to be racist or anything like that, but a lot of these cases are white police officers on black youths, mainly male black youths, and it's mainly in the southern parts of the United States, apart from New York. New York, they have that as gang crime.
Yeah, Mr. Orange,
Yeah.
have you covered any? Have you seen any of this Ferguson incident? I mean, I don't want to focus too much on it because the show's about police
Yeah.
brutality in
Yeah.
general. But Mr. Orange, did you pick up any of this story? Anything that shocked you, or anything that you thought, yeah, that makes sense for America, or anything like that?
Yeah, picked up very little of the actual detail. It does sound like a lot of the cases. I mean, obviously we don't know all the ins and outs of it because, for a start, to be honest, only the police officer and other police officers round are going to know for sure what happened. Go on, Mr. Pink.
I know it has been blown up. It's been in the news a lot. But what I've been trying to do in the last couple of days is just have a look, because I'm pretty sure, although I cannot substantiate the timeline, that it's happened again. So, I mean, even though it's in the news, it's a major piece of the news media coverage in that country and throughout the world, it has happened again where another police officer has this time been filmed by another person literally rolling up onto the scene, onto a situation with an irate, and he was irate, I've got to stress that, he was irate, and he was, waiting for the policeman to arrive.
Or was he armed? That's the question.
No, he was unarmed. He was unarmed, and not only was he unarmed, but he had his hands out. You see it on the film. So there's nothing in his hands, although, yes, he did directly approach the police officer. The police officer was also armed with a taser, chose not to use the taser, and shot the man dead in the street before he made the advance from the shop front to the police car. The reason I'm not giving you the name of the town and things is I cannot, for absolute certainty, say this has happened after Ferguson. I found out about it after Ferguson, and people are
It's
saying,
just unbelievable.
saying that it is. But you know what the man's crime was? He was obviously very, very distressed and very irate. He'd gone into the corner shop, taken 2 cans of beer, gone out, put the cans of beer at the side of the road, and then waited for the police to arrive.
Okay.
So obviously he wanted some kind of attention. The police will have been notified of that. He's waiting outside, basically, for the police to arrive. And their first thing is to rock up on the scene, in the car, jump out the door. He runs towards them. Bang, 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 you're dead. You do have a taser. They could have done that. And again, this has been caught on film. So I'm a bit sceptical as to whether it's a setup or whether it's some film students making it look like this, because I can't get any concrete facts like badge numbers, incident reports. But I mean, to try and get these from abroad, it's difficult.
Well, yeah, I've seen both videos, Mr. Pink. Yeah, it's just, I think, first of all, there's a partially racism. Second of all, overusing of the force, I mean, we're talking about trained people, professionally trained to do their job in such situation, but not to shoot.
Yeah.
This is not the first thing you need to think. I mean, you are the protector of people.
To serve and protect is on the side of the car.
To serve and protect, that's
I'm
right.
pretty certain as well, the first thing is to assess the situation. And I
Exactly.
don't think exiting the car door is fully being apprised and aware of the situation. Because there may have been other people hiding in wait, because this guy's waiting for you. So I can understand why you're on edge. But it just seems overreaction. I wish I could hopefully get more information on that. Mr. Brown, your fingers were in the air first.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, obviously, we could spend podcast after podcast about the US in particular. It has the most footage, it seems to be the most militarised and whatnot. A couple of interesting things, though, that I've noticed with regards to Ferguson. When it happened, the population of Ferguson, actually, gun sales went through the roof.
Yeah.
Wow.
After they expected the riots. Now that's an interesting thing for a start. So, as a form of protection against a shooting, gun sales went through the roof. And also, there's another thing here as well. There's a sort of a patriotic libertarian movement in the US that's shout a lot of 1776 type stuff, and a lot of the stuff very anti-government, blah blah blah. Now, they have a different, quite an interesting slant. What they're saying is that the media and the government, they actually do like to glorify these incidents as a way of keeping gun control, sort of bringing out new legislation for gun control. Now that's kind of interesting. It's very similar to, remember the Gaza topic that we discussed, where it was saying, who would you want in Gaza? Somebody that shoots at you if you want to invade. It's kind of a similar thing where if you want to bring out gun control and whatnot, it might be an element there of sort of blowing these things. Don't forget, these happen every day in America, but blowing certain ones out of, making them absolutely massive. I mean, like I said, a stat before, a black man in America is shot every 28 hours. Yeah? But every now and again, there's certain little stories. Now,
we're talking about millions of population.
Yeah,
America
yeah,
has 350
yeah,
million people.
Yeah.
And how many crimes attended on a daily basis by
So that's
police?
one person per million a year. A day, sorry. One person per million a year.
What the libertarians seem to suggest is whenever there's been discussions within Congress regarding the restriction of guns, certain stories like this, and as we've already admitted, this is quite common, as tragic as they are common. Stories like this seem to get blown into the news and whatnot, the multi-corporate news, and all of a sudden there's some legislation regarding gun control that was just around the corner. So, slight conspiracy, but an interesting one all the same. There's a couple of ways of looking at it. Mr. Orange, you got any comments on that?
I was just wondering how that would work in that scenario, to be honest. Because obviously the guy was, it's a police officer who's shot him. The police are still going to have the guns. It just seems maybe a bit marginal. I think, I don't know. I
think we go into the Mr. Orange. I think we go a little bit further than that. Obviously, we need to find out the background why there's needed a armed police, because there are gangs. Why there are gangs? Because there are poor situations in some areas are not developed as much, and no job offers, and people aren't given chance for his education. But this is a background. But now we're talking about the brutality of the police. Did you understand, guys? What did I just say? I'm just saying there's a lot of things why the police should be there, but there is a lot of things that the police shouldn't do, like overuse the force, where they have an equipment not to basically do it other way rather than kill a person, murder a person on the spot.
Just going back to what you were saying, Mr. Brown, about the media, it just rang a bell, and I just went and got this piece of information here. I think the police are also being played in this. This was from a source from the ODMP, org, Cultural Crisis in America. And here's a tidbit for you. 794 law enforcement officers have died since Obama took office, with no recognition from the White House whatsoever. A black man robbed a convenience store and assaulted a police officer. In doing so, he was shot and killed. The White House sent 3 representatives to his memorial service. So you can see how that is being pushed at the cops there, and maybe they're thinking, well, you know what, I'm fed up with this. I'm fed up with putting my life on the line to resolve these situations. So sorry, I'm not going to go for the taser first. I'm not going to go for the pepper spray. I'm going to go for the gun. I'm going to shoot them, and then fire first, sort it out later. The good old US mentality,
Okay. Fair point.
Well, it's a fair point.
It was just something I found. It just rang a bell there. I don't agree with it myself. I think at the end of the day, you're the one in charge of the cruiser. They do send them out on their own. They don't have a buddy system like over here. I mean, we always see the 2 detectives in the car, but a lot of the patrol officers are out on their own, especially in these rural areas where there might only be 5 officers, and they should be trained to think on their feet. They are the captain of the ship. They cannot just start firing off. They have to assess the situation and reasonably deal with it. This is why the small town sheriffs and stuff deal with things a little bit differently, or so we would be led to believe. There seems to be more here, and I don't think we'll ever get to the bottom of it. But I think if he really was in the cruiser, I'm pretty sure they have one of those cameras in the cruiser. Where's that footage? That would either exonerate or damn him. The police officer. And the fact that I've seen as well in the media, they're doing a fundraiser for the cop. And I don't know if you remember last year.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they raised about $300,000 dollars.
Well, last year where you had that, was he a security officer or a police officer at the student demonstrations, and he CS gassed or pepper sprayed all those...
Police
He was a police officer.
Yes.
And he did those students who were actually handcuffed and sitting on the floor, and he sprayed them, just walked up and down the line, and people were going, oh yes, to make your students grow, you must water them regularly and all that. And then he turned around and said, "Well, I'm having flashbacks and it's terrible." He's got early retirement, a great compo payout, and he's left his job. What?
Yeah, which is absolutely disgraceful. I just think
they are in restraints.
Yeah.
And we're paying for them. We pay their salary as well.
Yeah. The thing is, I mean, like I say, individual cases as such, we could get bogged down all night. But if you just wonder, like, how, we are discussing backgrounds, and Mr. Pink there came up with kind of, you said you didn't agree with it, but sort of an explanation as to why the police might feel like they've got their backs against the wall, and pretty much how, they're not being supported and whatnot, so they probably shoot first.
Because I can't substantiate this, but this
is just a possibility. I would say.
This is what they're being subjected to. So
Mr. Orange.
They are all very upset about the actual the victims or alleged victims.
Mr. Orange.
Mr. Orange, please, yeah.
So I was just going to say one point as well. I think you said the individual cases is just the fact that I think the media and the police and themselves and the governments, they're always too scared of police looking bad in any of these situations, because they fear, well, if there's a lack of trust in the police, then there could be rioting, or people won't inform, people won't call the police. I was thinking, what is it? I think there's never been a police officer imprisoned in the UK for police brutality. But even though we've had cases proved and that nothing's ever gone like that, and then it's the same thing that the police are doing. If there's any investigation, who's going to be doing it? It'll be the police.
Yeah.
All this information that we need to actually get to the bottom of, the latest ones, who's got all that information, is the police. And for me, I think the main issue is not that it happens, because obviously it's going to happen if there's an organisation that's that big and involved in violence on a daily basis, but just the fact of all the cover-ups or lack of
transparency
each time anything does happen.
There's a conflict of interest in there, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right.
As a public corporation,
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, if the police are investigating their own crimes, nothing going to come out. We need a civil institution that will be handling this type of cases. Well, I want to just speak generally. If you just let me have just a minute, Mr. Pink. I seen your hands in the air there.
Yeah, man, you go. You go.
Right. Yeah. Well, basically, I had a really, decent talk there about the police. About the we were talking about police, how they, might be under the pressure of the media, might be under the pressure of the society. That as soon as they're gonna do something wrong, they're gonna, be held liable. That's why they may snap. And I personally don't think that should ever be the case whatsoever. They should be a trained professional, mentally and physically, to tackle the day-to-day issues. They must be, first of all, a friend to a person in need. I hope you understand what I mean. Basically, you're in trouble, the police must be the person who will provide you assistance and help, rather than just be a bully who will tackle you and do, trying to basically do his way. What I'm trying to say, they paid our money. We paying taxes. It goes to their salaries. The first thing they must be basically the main assistance to us. There is a lot of stories that we can go into when the police were in time on their post and they saved someone, which is a great story. But we also seen a story where the police shooting people without a liable reason for. Right, sorry.
Go on, Mr. Pink.
Mr. Pink.
I agree that we're not getting the best out of them, but I think that's because we've changed the very nature of their jobs. I think that if you look back, when there wasn't the transparency, back in the 50s, 60s, early 70s, there wasn't this transparency. They did what they did, and they were the sheriffs, let's say. You were always told as a kid, if you're lost, ask a policeman. Now, not so much. I mean, they have they've been lumbered with too much of this nanny state social care bullshit where they have to spend more time actually filling out paperwork rather than actually, going out there and solving crime and being a friend to the people and things like that. I do understand that certain elements within the police are just clocking in and they want to get towards their pension, their payoff, and they don't want to take on stuff nearing the end of the shift because they know they'll have to stay extra and work extra hard, filling in the paperwork for nothing. Once we started putting these nanny state social worker kind of crap on them and stop them doing the jobs, I think we've undermined ourselves here. Mr. Brown, please.
Yeah, I just think we're kind of moving away from police brutality and I'm sort of discussing the police force in general. Now, obviously, there's all kinds of different police, and there's the Bobby on the beat that I think Mr. White was sort of discussing, who's a friend to the public and all that. I'm sure these guys do exist. We're talking about sort of the edge of the law, where it's sort of individual cases where it might be riots or there might be protests or this type of thing, and police highly trained. Yeah, highly armed police are overstepping the mark here. Now, just going back to the US, I mean, I don't want to browbeat the US, but they are, they're the biggest case here.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They're the biggest case. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. We're not just bashing the states. It's just the most exclusive when it comes to the militarized state at the moment in the West. But there's sort of theories there regarding, with the military, the actual military of the US. And they're going all these escapades around the world, and they have all this extra kit. Okay, now I'm just going back to a few sources here. Apparently, let me just get these sources for you. In the last 15 years, $4.2 billion worth of equipment, military equipment, has transferred to its local police departments. And you get these cases where you get these small towns, and they've got these armoured, what we would look like tanks. They're not tanks, but they're pretty much. The kit does not correspond with the town, all right? Now, there is that idea, a psychological idea that hey, listen, I reckon we can solve this between us. Mr. White, I know you've done paintball and whatnot. When you put on that kit, yeah, the mere fact of putting on the fatigues, yeah, the helmet, and you've got yourself some serious kit, yeah, some weapons. Me personally, I feel like a soldier. I might only be doing paintball, I might only be doing, as a kid, running around, the local park. But it's something psychologically about putting on this kit, driving these machines, yeah? Psychologically, it must take an effect. If all you've got is a little baton and a silly police hat, yeah? Psychologically, you're not just going to start wading into rights as such. I think there's something in this. I really do believe that the transferring of military equipment, yeah, for war zones, to local police forces, yeah, psychologically is having an effect on the police themselves. Now, there was an undercover investigation either last year or the year before, where a high-level Philadelphia police officer, undercover, I didn't realise he was saying it, but was telling somebody that they're now vetting police in Philadelphia for sociopathic tendencies and lack of empathy for when they are needed. Now, just think about that. That's actually a design, getting the right people in to do a job in regards to protest and whatnot. And it's almost like saying, yes, we do have this Bobby on the beat. That's all very well, but we've also got this sort of like, not secret police, but they tend to wear balaclavas and you can't really see the faces, and they seem to wade into people. Mr. Orange, you got something to say about that?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, maybe on a more general point, do you think that's part of the problem is the fact that the police, they're just humans anyway, but the type of people who go on to become police or are interested in that kind of thing have like a certain mindset. I mean, I've always seen it with the army. You see the same sort of people who want to join the army. You think, well, there's going to be a certain amount which loves a bit of violence there.
Yeah. You just break it up there, Mr. Orange. So you just want to repeat the last bit there. But was it about Iraq? You get people that go to Iraq just for the violence, and it's the same in the police.
No, I'm saying, so if you have a cop who's always wanted to become a riot cop, then you know that their driving passion is going to be for the violent side of it.
Yeah. But don't you think the interesting thing? Yeah, okay, I appreciate that is the case. But the interesting thing is, if we're going to believe this undercover report, that they actually see. So they're seeking out these people now. As much as these people want to be in a position of power, now it seems that in Philadelphia, they're actually seeking these people out that are seeking to be in positions of power and want to be brutal. So that's overstepping the line, guys, in my opinion.
Well, it's basically saying we'll go for what's practical rather than being principled.
But practicality, I mean, like, going back to Ferguson, you've shot someone 6 times, you've caused riots, twice in the head, 4 times in the body, unarmed man with his arms up. Is that practical? Was he not a more practical way of getting this guy arrested?
But I mean, obviously, this was a mistake. So, I mean, I don't agree with going that route anyway, and basically, obviously, the design of the police. I mean, the police's job is actually there for obviously raises issues anyway. I mean, you could argue all day and night about what their actual job is, but that's I can only see that's what they're thinking. They're thinking, well, if we've got these people who can do that, then in this situation, we've got a guy who's that way inclined.
Yeah. Just before you jump in there, Mr. Ping, I just want to give you another stat, guys. It's related to the militarisation of the local police. Another stat here saying since the 1980s, there's roughly 50,000 SWAT raids take place in the United States, right? 79% are simply for search warrants, okay? And that is an increase of 1,400% since the 1980s. Now, somebody's made a correlation there between the militarisation of the police, okay? And I suppose you think about it, you've got to balance the books, you've got to give reasons to your superiors why the hell you need all this kit. Somebody's made the correlation. The SWAT teams have suddenly increased these search warrants. Yeah, we need these weapons. We need all this gear because we've got all these search warrants to do. I mean, a fucking search warrant. Come on. Sorry, Mr.
People
Pink.
in Afghanistan. Sorry. Just to add it on. People in Afghanistan. I mean, U.S. Army soldiers do not have same equipment, even as half as the police SWAT team would have in a civil area in U.S.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Go on, Mr. Pink. Sorry.
Well, as we know, America runs on a policy of trickle-down economics. So these things do exist. These SWAT tanks, these flak jackets, and these suppressed, submachine guns and things like that. These are things that are no longer being used by the military. They exist, so they've got to be used somewhere. So they trickle down, and then eventually you'll have like the laser cannons in bloody New York and California and whatnot, and you'll have the town sheriff there with a multi-barreled machine gun. They exist. They've got to be used somewhere. And I think going back to
does a submachine gun have to be used in Ferguson?
You've invested in these. They're no longer good enough for military use. They still exist. You've got a great big crate of them. Do you take the adult step and destroy these and actually have to go back to some good policing, or do you just go, send them there, they've got them, we can just brutally put them down whenever we wish because we're the big boys?
Okay.
It's worked for 200 years over here, not having armed cops on the actual beat. They have been, armed response. We've got the Tower armed response, and I'm sure you've seen them over the years in different stages of alerts in airports and such like that. But it does work. The problem with the Americans is they've got a constitutional right to bear weapons. Well, when you're killing each other, it's only yourself to blame. Going back to Philadelphia, I think they are shit scared of it turning into a new Detroit, what with the economic situation there, the total lack of jobs and lack of any upward mobility. There's nothing to strive for. If you can get out, get out. So I think they don't want that situation. So they do want a hard-hitting team. As for the SWAT teams, yes, even here, you have to use your budget or you will have it cut. So they're going to operate these. The search warrants, are they being done on homes in suburbia, or are they being used in known gang areas or known gang territories?
This is, well, from the footage you can get on YouTube, we're talking, his family's in a house, grandma's on the floor, guns to the head.
What is that? Is that footage that someone's mocked up?
No.
Yeah, so the cops are coming?
Mr. Pink. this isn't even up for debate. Yeah, you go onto YouTube. You know what? These shows in America that follow these guys around, it's almost glorified to a certain extent in the right wing.
I've seen Cops. Yeah, it's fiction, just like Duck Dynasty. It's all written.
I honestly think we can't go down the path that this is fiction. This is absolute facts. People can do their own research, but I am willing to bet my life on the fact that these SWATs are well over the top in suburban areas.
Yeah,
From the research I've done. Yeah, but we're talking about police brutality here. We're talking about when did he overstep the line. And if you're telling me pretty much a commando troop from Afghanistan, yeah, smashing down someone's door in suburbia because he's just been suspected of smoking weed and getting the grandma on the floor is not a case of police brutality, I would have to disagree. It's not mock-ups. You know what I mean? The research is there, the footage is there. This isn't about
YouTube is not the best place to get this information. Now, I do take it to get the wrong address. There was that one where they actually brained the kid with a stun grenade, and it was the wrong goddamn address. They are only human, as been said before. Yeah. It's going to happen. But they need to be held to account. I mean, for this one in Ferguson, the guy has made a mistake. There's no two ways around that. It is a mistake. That kid should not be dead. He should be held to account for that.
Yeah,
doesn't seem to be.
It was definitely it was a mistake, but it wasn't like he slipped.
Seemed to be any
fell on his gun. Didn't slip and fall on his gun, so it was a mistake.
It's not an accident. It's a mistake.
Yeah. But is it a mistake of society? Is it a mistake of militarization of police, or is it the design? I mean, people say that America is the biggest police state in the world. What they don't mean, they don't actually mean when they say that there's a trickle down from the military where they say, what should we do with all these guns? There's a lot of theory. Noam Chomsky says this type of thing. Respected academics believe that the reason that there's a militarized system in America is simply because it is an experiment of control with the illusion of democracy. And these, like I say, these are academic, respected throughout the world theories. So these are as much weight as, it was an accident, blah, blah, blah. I mean, obviously, we're here to discuss these matters. But guys, listen, the US, we could go on all night about the US.
I think we have to leave the US. Unfortunately, they are armed, and they will always trot out the bad guys are armed, so we need to be armed.
Yeah.
They're always going to do that. But I'm sorry, the exact same style of policing can be done without... there was a case just after Ferguson in Germany, a man who was actually armed and was quite clearly deranged, swinging, I think it was a sword or maybe a rather large knife. They tasered him. There was another man near Buckingham Palace with a knife. He was actually threatening to kill himself. I think I would have been tempted just to let nature take its course there, but police... One jumped in front of him, he's like looking at him, the other one went behind him, tased him to the floor, took the knife away, arrested him. I think 5 seconds start to finish, done. Nobody died, someone got bruised, but no one got shot 6 times. That's...
Yep. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
In these 2 cases, both of them were a clear and present danger to the police officers, the people around, and they were armed. And they were both resolved non-fatality. It can be done.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys, as an easy target, obviously the US is an easy target for police brutality. Now, I started off the show by saying, for me personally, the UK police has the best police force in the Western world. However, I also said that I did not think it was good enough. Okay, so let's just move our target to the UK police here, right? Now, let me just start off by saying the Metropolitan Police motto. Okay, now this is somebody. I'm sure it's honourable people, noble people, have invented a logo or a symbol with these words on it, okay? This is the motto of the Metropolitan Police in the UK. 3 words: fidelity, bravery, integrity. Okay? Now, it's not a linguistic show, but I do think it's very, very important we break these down. So fidelity, that's just the quality of being faithful. All right, we have to ask ourselves when it comes to the police, faithful to who? I think this is a very, very interesting word to add to the police force.
Indeed, it's really a good question.
As Mr. White explained before, theoretically, they're supposed to be faithful to the public.
Yeah.
Indeed. First and foremost.
And the law.
And the law, yeah. Bravery, obviously bravery, deterred by danger, not deterred by danger or pain, okay? And integrity. Integrity is being, and I would say integrity is a personal choice. So these people are being asked, this is your personal choice to do an honourable thing, okay? So somebody's thought about this, okay? So just fidelity, which is loyalty, bravery, obviously not deterred by in danger or whatever, integrity, a personal choice, yeah, to do the honourable thing. So let's just keep those things in mind, guys, when we talk about the UK police. Okay, anybody want to start on the UK police? Mr. Pink. The US is easy, okay?
Oh, yes.
The US is easy, okay? The UK. Police brutality, it's out there, guys. Has anybody come across anything in the research? Or do you want me to start, guys?
No, I'm quite happy to start.
Okay.
Where I think where my research fell down rather rapidly was, as Mr. Orange pointed out, yeah, when there are instances, and there are instances where things don't go to plan and the police overreact, and there has been ones on film and there has been proven ones with it. The people that investigate usually run along the lines of, yes, we can see how things went wrong, but in the midst of this event or this protest, it's hard to pin exactly, and they just muddy the waters, and then nobody really gets convicted. A couple of people might go on to desk jobs, and people will be slowly retired and pushed out to the side. There's no one really held to accountability, which undermines public opinion straight away, and there isn't this clear, you always see, back to America, internal affairs. There isn't really, there is the IPCC and stuff like that, but there isn't really a hard and fast, we are going to internally look at this and we have the powers to arrest and convict these police officers. I think we always get a bit scared that, fair enough, PC Blogs has done wrong. He hammered someone around the head with his baton. Shouldn't have done. That person has gone into a coma and died. That is an error of judgment. He should have to be accountable for that. But I think people always stray away from actually holding him accountable because they don't want to send him to prison because they go, oh, all the other people in his other years of service are going to be there and he's going to die. Maybe a special cop prison, I don't know, but there needs to be a certain level of accountability. Mr. Brown, I can see you waving frantically, darling.
Yes, thank you, darling. For me, obviously, the UK it's very difficult actually to find brutality on mass like in the US. We have said this. However, quite interesting in my research is that a lot of the techniques that are used in the British in the British police, come from techniques from Britain as a colonial power. Okay, it was ways of small elites such as Britain, yeah, controlling large masses, yeah. But what they did was they dehumanised them, yeah, and they're at the bottom and we have a rightful at the top and all that, and that way it was able more to control them, with a small number of with violence basically. And there was just one incident here that struck me. You know what, we talk about police brutality as being a modern phenomenon, all right? The more weapons you've got, the more violent society comes, then it makes the police more violent and blah blah blah. Okay, one that caught my eye was, we all know about Gandhi and his non-violent protest, which was basically, when I say non-violent, they did not raise their arms to stop the blows. That's how non-violent Gandhi's protests were. Okay, we're talking like, the pinnacle of non-violence here. 1930s. Two things that interest me. It was regarding what was effectively a salt tax. It was a protest about a salt tax. Okay, in India when we ran the show. Now, according to eyewitnesses, yeah, the British police, smashed and beat over 350 people, cracked skulls, yeah, broken collarbones, 2 died at the scene, right? Now this, when you're talking about a clear example of a peaceful protest and police brutality, you cannot look any further than this British police wading into a load of Hindus that literally did not raise their arms to stop the blows under command by Gandhi, yeah? Right or wrong, but they probably didn't expect the viciousness of the attack, yeah? Nearly 400 people smashed to bits, okay? Take that, just keep that in mind. That's the 1930s, all right? Modern day. Now, the miners' strike. Now, for me, in my lifetime, police brutality was at its most visual during the miners' strike. For those that don't know, this was just basically, well, not basically, went on for a good number of years, and it was the coal miners, solidarity throughout the country, protesting about their rights and their jobs.
Yeah.
Mr. Pink?
I would just like to take this small amount of time here and just point out that the two things that you've raised are both instances where the police have not been acting for the law, although with the salt tax you always got that pretense that they were breaking the law. They were acting as an arm of the political structure to enforce the political will.
Yeah.
Because it was political will to break Gandhi. It's political will to break the miners' unions.
Indeed.
There's nothing from the law courts, and that's where sometimes the waters get muddied there. And I think the police have to remember they are a servant of the people and an arm of the courts, not the political structure.
Yeah.
Mr. Orange.
Well, I think that's where most of the outrage over sort of police brutality comes, because it's always at protests or in some kind of struggle where basically the police are there as, I mean, in the most purest form of protecting the interests of the government who's in charge at the time, unless it was like a coup or something. But I mean that leads to the larger question of what you think the police force's job is, and I think a lot of people have already lost faith in the fact that the police are there to, you know, look out for the general public. They're there to look out for a certain general public, because you only ever see brutality in poor areas, especially in this country.
Yeah, we're talking about the recorded on video cases where we see police brutality. How many there are not recorded? How many of them are not recorded? You know, the aggression by the police when they're trying to, you know, they just overusing their powers or their basically position in society, and it's not been recorded on video. And those are the problem of the actual, you know, there's a trust issue here, Mr. Brown.
Just go back to the miners' strike. Mr. Pink made a fantastic point, and one I was hoping to sort of, you know, come to the conclusion myself. Going back to the miners' strike, so there is documented evidence there now where the police force were literally their wages were tripled. They were tripled, okay, by the government. And they were transported en masse from the south to the north, where mainly where all the strikes were being held. And this is what raises this question now about the police. Okay, with the two examples that I've just given there, and Mr. Pink has hit the nail on the head here. When does the police, no longer become the police, but become the enemy? All right. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you think the miners were right or wrong, or if you think that, you know, the Hindus should have paid the salt tax or not. We're talking about, this show is about police brutality. Now, it seems to me to be a connection, especially in this country, between police brutality and not your Bobby on the street type law, but when the interests of the elites within the government and within society, the rich, become questioned. Yeah, then all of a sudden the police become, I mean, for example, it was called Thatcher's Private Army. The police were known as Thatcher's Private Army. And since it's come out there, and do you know what as well, guys, we have to be, you know, it's all very well saying that, you know, the police, there's reasons why they might do this or the reasons might be that. I have actually seen, there's a documentary, I recommend it to anybody, called When Britain Went to War. And I think it was something like 25 years after the miners' strike. And they've got police there that could, okay, at the time they were young and whatnot, but they've reflected on their actions 25 years on. There's police officers there on film. This is an interview. This is not undercover film. This is almost like a pride saying, best time of my life, that. Tripled my wages. We all drove sports cars. Yeah? And that was, so for him, best time of his life, he was a young man in the police force, okay? And he was driving a sports car and he had loads of money. So there has to be a correlation between a capitalist ideology of how we're nurtured, and when the police that we deserve no longer becomes that police and becomes a private army for vested interests? Mr. Pink?
I think the answer is very, very simple. Much like nurses, you have to pay these servants of society an actual, livable and rewarding wage. Your firemen, you have to look after them, and your policemen, you have to look after them. This will make them less susceptible to bribes and less susceptible to triple overtime. Makes all your conscience disappear. You have to pay these people an actual decent wage and make it something to aspire to. Make it back that your kids will want to be a police officer, because it's something, and it should be a meritocracy style kind of setup in the police, so that you're getting decent people. And please, I would love to have some of these people psychologically assessed. It doesn't make any sense.
I'm not sure that's relevant in this particular
and
situation.
I'll even pay for it. We cut the money we spend on MPs.
But by giving
you're saying the police need help basically because they've been paid too low and they're getting too aggressive because of it.
I think that certainly because of their pay freeze and things like that, there has been, instead of them going to the barrel and having the choice of candidates to take what they can get, much like the army now, where they're going to colleges and doing pre-army physical education classes to actually try and get a choice of people when they leave college or they leave the secondary schools that are actually physically fit enough to be in the army. They want choice, not just the dregs and what they can get. Mr. Orange, please go ahead, man.
Well, I mean, in the West, from what I've seen, police are always, hailed as champions, as heroes all the time. You look through the media. Surely it's seen as something to aspire to.
Texas Walker.
I think the point.
These people who join, it's I'm pretty sure the police wages. I mean, I haven't gone into statistics, so you can school me on it if you want, but
it's certainly not the lowest wages.
Pretty well paid.
I think the point I was
it's
getting
not the
at,
lowest, but when a shelf stacker in Aldi's earning more, it's a bit much.
I think the point that I was getting at.
Have you got
money
statistics? Is that definitely?
I have actually seen that, and
something...
that was definitely true as of last year. And we're not even talking night shift at Aldi's. The starting constable wage, this seems to drive their obsession with getting into either CID or getting above just Bobby on the beat. But, sorry, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I think the point I was trying to make was there shouldn't be any amount of money in the world that would make you go and beat some unarmed people. The fact that you may be on a low wage and you've tripled it, it gives you some kind of incentive. I think what I'm trying to say is that I think that they are products of the environment, and if the environment is saying that the more toys that you own, the more gadgets that you own, the better person you are, then it's quite easy to see yourself as wanting to be some kind of elite and to dehumanise those that don't have anything. And it's sort of like a pack mentality. You're there in your riot gear, you're earning loads of money, you're being told by your superiors that these are not individuals, these are a collective en masse that are stopping the economy of the country from continuing, as though the economy of the country is more important than their individual and collective rights. It was a shock, I'll be honest with you, and I'm not often shocked, but for a policeman, 25 years after beating unarmed people with a baton, to say with a big smile on his face, that was the best time of my life because I was driving a sports car, I think there's something inherently wrong with the system there. Mr. Pink?
I agree, it is shocking that 25 years has got no remorse and you didn't look back on that and go, But I mean, classing it back in its time, definitely understand the herd mentality, and I do understand that they did have specialised shock troop units of the police. But let's be honest, so did the strikers, you had the flying pickets and things. But it's been sold again to the police officers and the people that we are the Tories, we are capitalist West, what we're doing is right, and we are fighting against the evils of socialism, and the unions were betrayed at the time, just like that. I mean, Liverpool is only really just recovering from the destruction that was wrought down on them. It was quite a good union-driven economy there, and that has been broken, and the working class there have been broken, and I think they use the police to do that, but it's as of its time. Now, I don't think you'd be able to get the policymakers to run the police quite the same way. I think there have been reforms to try and make it better. I don't think it's gone far enough.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you another example. Probably the most modern one that we've got at the moment. I don't know if you guys have heard of Ian Tomlinson, who was struck by a baton and threw on the floor, walking home from work. He got caught up in some, I wouldn't say they were peaceful, they were robust protests, but they certainly weren't violent protests. It was the G20. For those that don't know, the G20 is the top 20 economies in the world getting together in some city. This time it was London, to sort of structure the economy of humanity. Okay. What was interesting about the footage is there for you. It's not like, again, it's all there for you.
Right, yeah,
there's a guy there walking away with his hands in his pockets. He's 47 years old. He's not some big steadhead there with a skinhead. He's just a normal guy. He wasn't even part of the protest. What I find fascinating about this footage is you've got these police with the normal UK police helmet on that everybody recognises, okay, and you've got these ones in balaclavas and batons. It's almost like the segregation is right before your eyes. I'm not even trying to hide it. So obviously the guy with the UK police helmet and not the balaclava does nothing. However, the guy's walking away. He smashes him on the thigh with a baton and he throws him on the floor. Now, 10 minutes later, this guy had a cardiac arrest and died, basically. All right? Again, the fascinating thing about this was, I know you said there's been reforms, Mr. Pink, but essentially, this was the protection of the G20 summit. Yeah? This was police in balaclavas. What the fuck are they in balaclavas for? Unless you're going to do something that's not moral or not... Yeah. You don't wear a fucking balaclava. That's the first thing. That's the first thing. Unless, if you say, Mr. Pink, unless it's really cold, yeah. Well, Mr. Pink, what was you going to say?
No, the actual comment from the police was, we may need these people to do undercover work in the future, so we're protecting their identity. Which, okay, let's be honest. There's vans there, Matt. Police CCTV. You're the one filming everybody.
Yeah. So, this is very modern in the last few years, guys. Again, police brutality at its most raw for me personally. The guy was about as nonchalant as possible, walking away with his hands in his pocket and all the fella. And, obviously, the policeman didn't mean to kill him. Yeah.
No.
However, from behind, smashed him on the legs, threw him on the floor. Yeah, he was an older guy, ticker went, end of, right? That's police brutality in the modern sense in the UK. Now, like I said before, the UK is the best in the world, and they're still doing this.
Yeah, and nobody was actually held to account for this.
No.
Yeah.
They tried to get the guy. Yeah, they've tried to get the guy a few times. I'm not sure if there's been a sort of civil thing, but hey, 42 for nail, the police. 42 for nail.
The waters were muddied, and it was we can't really identify and things like that. Now, this is one police officer. What the point I was trying to make was, you had en masse during the miners' strikes, battalions of blue-clad, armour-plated people just laying in. That's the en masse kind of control. I was trying to say they no longer have that. But in this case, again, much like going back to Ferguson, an error has been made. That man has not done his duty. He is not held up to the standard he should have done, and he should be held accountable, and publicly so. And that is the only way you're going to rekindle the fire of belief from the public in the police service. So this whole, we can't say who he is, and we don't know.
So, Mr. Pink, then, from your perspective, then, why is this not happening? Why has this never happened? From your honest perspective, why are police not being held accountable for brutality?
I don't think that the structure currently exists within the police, as it currently stands, and this goes for whistleblowing as well. There isn't a structure inside there with which people can go, yeah, I know he's beating up drunk, so he's, doing this, he's doing that. There isn't a structure within them to self-police. They need a separate organisation that is able to fully investigate and actually get to the bottom of this, and a team that we can trust in, not the... Sadly, dear listener, we must leave Mr. Pink mid-rant, because it was at that precise moment the lights went down, the internet went off, and the sound of booted feet in stairwells came to take the dead pixels away. We hope they shall return next week, and we hope the other half and conclusions of this week's debate have survived inside the lower intestinal tract of Mr. Blonde. So until then, feel free to update us with your comments, questions, and ideas for future debates. So hopefully with good behaviour, we shall see you next time, dear listener.